मुई सावधान माते बंदो मुई सावधान माते जाहर प्रसादे भाई ए भवतारिया जाए जाहर प्रसादे भाई ए भवतारिया जाए कृष्ण प्राप्ति होई जा होईते कृष्ण प्राप्ति होई जा होईते गुरुमुख पद्मा वाक्य शीते ते करियाक्य गुरुमुख पद्मा वाक्य शीते ते करियाक्य আর না করি মনে আশা আর না করি মনে আশা श्री गुरु चरणे रति এই সেই উত্তম গতি श्री गुरु चरणे रति এই সেই উত্তম গতি যে প্রসাদে पूरे सर्वयाशा je prasade pure sarvayasha Chakhudan dilo je janme janme Prabhu she Chakhudan dilo je janme janme Prabhu she Divya Jnana Hriday Prakashita Divya Jnana Hriday Prakashita Prema Bhakti Jaha Haite Avidya Vinasha Jate Prema Bhakti Jaha Haite Avidya Vinash Jate Vede Gai Jahara Charita Vede Gai Jahara Charita Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adhama Janara Bandhu Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adhama Janara Bandhu Lokanath Lokera Jivana Lokanath Lokera Jivana Aha Prabhu Kara Daya De Hamare Pada Chaya Aha Prabhu Kara Daya De Hamare Pada Chaya Ebeja Shukhu Shukri Bhuvana Dua Pade Laila Sharana आह प्रभु कर दया दे हमरे पद छाया आह प्रभु कर दया दे हमरे पद छाया Vijasu Sukri Bhuvana Dwapade Laila Sharana Aha Prabhu Kara Daya De Hamare Pad Chaya आह प्रभु कर दया दे हमारे पद छाया पद्मपाद पतित पावन गुरुदेव लय न शरण जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 हा प्रभु कर दया दे हमरे पद छाया आह प्रभु कर दया दे हमरे पद छाया आह प्रभु कर दया दे हमरे पद छाया प्रभु पार पतित पावना जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 ओ प्रेमानंदी हरि हरि बोल हरे कृष्ण Thank you. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Utaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalata Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you also for giving me an opportunity to speak a few words about this very glorious topic, very profound topic, Guru Vandanam. We'll try to speak a little bit on this, of course, this song, but on the topic of Guru in general, but especially on the content of this particular song written by the great Vaishnava savant, Srila Narottam Das Thakur, who wrote this as the opening song of his Prema Bhakti Chandrika. Now, the topic of Guru Puja is very important. That's why Srila Prabhupada asked us to worship the spiritual master every day. And as with other sects, even in Gaudiya Math, generally this Guru Puja is happening only annually on Vyas Puja. Guru Purnima, or in our tradition, we have on the appearance day of the spiritual master himself. But Srila Prabhupada asked us to sing this song every day. He wanted to ensure that we got the message that we also sing every day at Mangalarti. What is that message? Yasya prasadad Bhagavat prasada. Very simply put, by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur again. You'll find me quoting from him a lot because he talks about this subject a lot. But when the spiritual master is pleased, Krishna is pleased. In other words, it's very similar to what Prahlad Maharaj told his father in Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 7, chapter 5, text number 32. Naisham matistavarukraman krim sprashatya nartha pagamo yadartha mahiyasam pararajobhishekam nishkinchananam navranita yavat. Unless they smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava completely freed from material contamination, persons very much inclined toward materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, who is glorified for his uncommon activities. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord in this way can one be freed from material contamination. So here Prahlad Maharaj is answering his father's question, how did you become so attached to Krishna? He couldn't believe, despite having, he's trying to kill him every day in different ways. And Prahlad just doesn't give up. How have you become so attached that this is your character? And this is his answer. Charya Vaishnava Seva Paichinistar Keba. It's also stated by the same poet, Narottam Das. So here it says, Prabhupada has translated this verse, persons very much inclined toward materialistic life. The only way that they can become attached to the lotus feet of the Lord is by becoming attached to the lotus feet of a Vaishnava in this way. Raise your hand if you're very much inclined toward materialistic activities. We have to be honest. So he's talking to us. He's not just talking to his demoniac father, he's talking to anyone who has the same propensities. And more or less we all do. So this is the point. This is the point. And it's so important to have this Guru Puja every day that Srila Prabhupada actually one day, there's a lot of noise going on. I don't know if there's any way to minimize it, but it would be very helpful, for me at least. Seems like all sides it's coming. I think it was in Mumbai once, Srila Prabhupada even stopped the kirtan and he said, "Where's Tamal Krishna Goswami?" And somebody had to go find him. He was up in Prabhupada's room, no doubt. And he brought him there to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada told him, "Don't ever miss this Guru Puja. Don't ever miss it. You should always be here every day." So it's the same point we've made already, that Srila Prabhupada wanted us to sing this every day, and there's a reason for that. Because we're so materialistic and we're so independent and such false ego, unless we drill it into our heads every day by repeating this song, we don't get it. We think that the spiritual master is just some formality. Nowadays, some people even preach this philosophy also, even in ISKCON. You don't have to take initiation, or rather initiation is just Harinam or divine knowledge. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but anyway, so this is the importance of Guru Puja. Prabhupada instructed Tamal Krishna Goswami to never miss Guru Puja. All right, so why this song? Of all the songs that we could sing at Guru Puja, why this one? That's something we have to think about. If you were the founder and acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, this would have been a decision that you would have had to make, what to sing. So why did Prabhupada make this decision? Well, hopefully in this next couple of days, 2-3 days, we can hope to at least shed some light on the tremendous depth of these simple words in this song. Every great Vaishnava Acharya, in case you haven't noticed, they may sing things that are very simple, a simple language, stated very simply, but very, very deep. And Narottam Das Thakur is certainly one of the best at doing that. So it's deceptively simple language. Anybody can understand, but very, very deep principles are discussed here. Now, in large part, as I said, we're going to also study the commentary by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. The very fact that he wrote a commentary on this song is telling enough, but moreover, he wrote a Sanskrit commentary on this song. The song is simple Bengali language. He wrote a Sanskrit commentary on a Bengali song. So, that indicates not only that the content is most essential, which we've been discussing, but also that Narottam Das Thakur was the right person to express them. We've also said that. I mean, in principle, any spiritual aspirant has to deal with this subject matter first and foremost. How many people here have read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita? Raise your hand if you've read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So what's in Adi Lila chapter 1? Vande Gurun. He's talking about the spiritual masters in chapter 1, plural spiritual masters. And in that chapter, in his purports, Srila Prabhupada says spiritual masters are many. Particularly, there are two kinds of spiritual master. We have Shiksha Guru, Diksha Guru, both. And ideally and usually they are one and the same person. I'm speaking from personal experience in ISKCON. We didn't really recognize very much distinction. Although we had read that verse, it didn't really mean that much to us as it does nowadays, because everyone in the entire movement was initiated and instructed by Srila Prabhupada. He was the only source of information for any of us, or initiation also. So, and Prabhupada also, generally he spoke about this topic without making a great distinction between the Shiksha Gurus and the Diksha Gurus. He also emphasizes throughout his books that in general, a real Diksha Guru, actual Guru, means he has to be a Paramahamsa Uttama Adhikari. And this was assumed with regards to our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. Of course, he also explains in his Nectar of Instruction, text number 5 purport, sometimes a spiritual master, even a Kanishta Adhikari, but better than that is a Madhyam Adhikari, can also act as spiritual masters. They can. But the disciples of such spiritual masters should know that they cannot advance beyond that point, beyond what their spiritual master has realized. How can he teach them? You cannot give what you don't have. That's a very essential thing to consider also. So anyway, both things are there. But these are the first things that we have to understand. That's why Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami talks about them first. And following in his footsteps, who wrote Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu? Yes. So he's also talking about this. We'll speak more on that later. Now, in one of his many other Sanskrit compositions, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also glorifies Narottam Das Thakur. We're talking about why we sing this song at Guru Puja. And what does he say about him? He said, Yad bhakti nishtha palavrekhireva sparsha puna sparsha maniva yasya pramanyam shrutivad yadiyam tasmai namaha srila narottamaya. Repeatedly, he says, I offer my respectful obeisances unto Srila Narottam Das Thakur, whose staunch faith in devotional service, bhakti nishtha, is like lines written upon a stone. Is it very easy to erase the lines that are written into stone, carved into stone? Not so much. That's why we know about Indian history from how many thousands of years ago? Ashok, he's written in all these stones all over the country. So it's very pakka. So this was what Narottam Das Thakur's faith in devotional service, bhakti nishtha. You can interpret it two ways. One, he has full faith and conviction and dedication to devotional service. That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is that his devotional service was very fixed, because we know nishtha is one of the stages of bhakti that Rupa Goswami outlines. We'll talk about that later. All right, so sparsha punaha sparshamaniva yasya. And he was like a touchstone. Srila Prabhupada was also like a touchstone. Certainly Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, was also like a touchstone. He was mad with prema, and anybody that he came in contact with, anyone he touched, anyone he interacted with, anyone got his prasadam, heard his chanting, that person also became mad with love of Godhead. Otherwise, how is it possible Srila Prabhupada went with no facility whatsoever to a country full of unfavorable and not pious, impious people, and yet he created a movement of thousands of Vaishnavas? How is it possible? You're the touchstone? So he's glorifying Narottam Das Thakur like this. Sparsha punaha sparsham aniva yasya. And here's the real point I'm making now. Pramanyam evam shrutivad. Shrutivat yadiyam. This person, Narottam Das Thakur, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, his words are just as authoritative as the Shruti mantras. Pramanya. Pramana means evidence. And Shrutivat means just on an equal par, practically speaking, or at least comparable to the Vedic authority. We have to explain this. People don't know much about Vedic authority nowadays. Nobody reads any books. What to speak of religious books? Not even Prabhupada's books. What to speak of the Vedas? What is the one book that everybody reads in 2025? Facebook. That we know. Every day, religiously, we don't miss. Is it not a fact? Yes. Because somebody else owns us. That's why. We're being controlled by whoever runs those things. And we're being spied on, by the way. Keep it in mind. That's another thing. Actually, the people who designed all this social media, who designed all these cell phones and internet applications, they're all hanging up on the whole business. They want nothing to do with it. They won't touch it anymore, many of them. I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore because it's destructive. If you haven't experienced it yet, you will. But anyway, the point that we're making is that pramanyam evam shruti yadiyam tasmai namaha srila narottamaya. Because his words are every bit as authoritative as the Vedas themselves. I was going to explain. Why did he say this? Why did Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur say it this way? He could have said Narottam Das Thakur's words are just as authoritative as the Smritis. Right? Everybody know the difference between the Shruti and the Smriti? I will explain. Shruti is the basis of all Vedic authority. Shruti consists of the 4 Vedas, Rik, Sama, Yajur, Atharva. And attached to each of those Vedas, we have Upanishads and Aranyakas and Brahmanas. These are corollary Vedic literature. They're not Smritis, they're Shrutis also. Upanishads especially. Just like Srila Prabhupada from Krishna Yajur Veda, Srila Prabhupada has translated for us. While we all slept in the middle of the night, he was up at night writing these things. What did he translate from Krishna Yajur Veda? Ishopanishad. Very, very profound knowledge there, and wonderful, wonderful purports also. Although it's not light reading, it was one of the first books that I got from Srila Prabhupada, and it just convinced me instantly. All right, so he could have said it's, Narottam Das Thakur is just as authoritative as the Smriti. But he doesn't say that. Shruti is the basis of all Vedic authority because only the Shruti is apaurushaya. That means unauthored. Nobody wrote the Vedas. Is that correct or is that not correct? No one wrote them. Anyone have some doubts about this? Raise your hand. Well, wait a minute. There should be doubts because Krishna says in chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita, Kya? Vedaishta sarvair ahameva vedya. I'm the one who, what is that? The next line. No. Vedanta krit. Veda vedeva jaham. Vedanta krit means I'm the one who made these Vedanta. He doesn't say Veda krit. He says Vedanta krit. That's a different thing. Anyway, Shruti is apaurushaya, no human author. No divine author either. How is that? Why do we listen to the Vedas if there's not even a divine author? Why? No author means the Vedas are eternal, absolute truth, eternal sound vibration. If there's an author, that means the Vedas have a beginning, a point at which they were created. But that's not the case. And if they were created by an author, that would most likely be a human author. Right? This is the assumption. But no, it's not like that. They're considered to be apaurushaya. And because the word apaurushaya, there's no purush involved here, including even Krishna. That's why throughout Bhagavad Gita, what does Krishna himself refer to or paraphrase in so many verses? The Upanishads. He's referring directly to the Vedic literatures. Even though he's God, but just to show us by his own example, he's quoting from Vedic authority. What's one example? Najayate mriyate vakadachin nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyaha. This is from which Upanishad? Maybe it's Katha Upanishad, I don't remember. And again, later on in Bhagavad Gita, what else does he say? Brahma Sutra Padaishcheva Hetumad Bhirvinishitai. When he's trying to establish the authority of those who have taught these things before, he reminds us that these people are all quoting from Brahma Sutra. That is the basis of authority. Now, 4 Vedas, Upanishads, Aranyakas, and Brahmanas. The content of these things, especially the philosophical content from the Upanishads, this has been codified into the Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta Sutra. And who compiled this Vedanta Sutra? Vyasadeva. Yes. Vyasadeva also happens to be an incarnation of the personality of Godhead. So Vedanta, although it has an author, but it has the authority of Shruti almost, because it's entirely comprised of Shruti. Just rearranging the Vedas really is what all it is done. Okay, so this is the basis of Vedic authority, and any source that has faithful allegiance to Shruti gives authority to any other Vedic texts. And what are those Vedic texts that are following the Shruti? What are they called? Think about the linguistics here. Shruyate, Shruti, means shravanam, to hear something. What we hear from eternal time in the form of these Vedic mantras, this is called Shruti. And the Vedic literatures which are composed on the basis of those Shrutis and with reference to those Shrutis, as we've been discussing, that is something that we all recollect. We remember it. Therefore, it's called Smriti. So Shruti Smriti. And Rupa Goswami has told us in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and other places as well, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharata Vidhim Vina Aikanti Ki Harer Bhakti Utpataiva Kalpate. We have to be careful. Anything that we try to pass off as bhakti, we have to immediately quote from the Vedic literatures to substantiate its authority. Otherwise, what is its authority? Dubious. Or maybe no authority. Actually, Rupa Goswami says it much stronger than I do. What does he say? Utpataiva is just a disturbance, social nuisance. We see them. Here in Vrindavan, it's very common. People just, people who are too much in love with Krishna, but they're just a nuisance, actually. They're in love with Krishna sometimes. Sometimes they're in love with wine and women and bidis and, God only knows what else they do. So, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharata Vidhim Vina Aikanti Ki Hera Bhakti Utpataiva Kalpate. We have to steer clear of that. In chapter 17 of Bhagavad Gita, text 15, Krishna himself tells Arjuna that the austerity of speech is to speak what is truthful, beneficial, pleasing, and sweet, but also to regularly recite the Vedic literatures. And this is what Srila Prabhupada does. This is his example. Throughout his books, we see he's quoting the same verses again and again and again and again. We've all heard them hundreds of times. That's why we find Prabhupada's books boring. That's why we don't read them. It's better to read Facebook. It's more juicy. But the fact of the matter is that Prabhupada is setting the example for us as well. That Krishna says this is the use of this speech. This is the use of speech which is an austerity that will elevate you. And it will elevate your audience. And Srila Prabhupada quotes these verses in full again and again and again and again and again, only to show us which verses are important, which are the verses that we have to know, and which are the verses that we should also repeat again and again and again and again. So that's what Krishna means when he says to regularly recite Vedic literatures, to learn verses by heart, kantastha, as they say. That is also a function of smaranam, Vishnoho smaranam, remembering the Lord. So this is auspicious. All right, so the basis of Shruti is the basis of authority of all other Vedic texts, including even Krishna's own words. We've discussed this already. It's ironic, but this is the teaching. And for all these reasons, no one can even question the authority of Shruti without thereby becoming an atheist. This is another thing. In our tradition, I mean, if you look up in the dictionary, what is the definition of an atheist? Atheist का मतलब क्या है? हर एक कोश में. Huh? Okay, that's our definition. But come se come English dictionaries, man. Their actual definition is that somebody doesn't believe in God, he's an atheist. But that is not what our acharyas say. Our acharyas say, you may believe in God, you may not believe in God, but if you believe in the authority of the Vedas, then you are a theist. It's called astic. Shabda ke parusham narsho. Astic, what does astic mean? A theist. And as opposed to the astic, who else is there? Nastika. Gnostic means the atheist. The definition of these two, one believes in the Vedas, the other one does not believe in the Vedas. All right, we don't need to get into all this detail, but the point is, when we compare anyone's words to the Shruti, not the Smriti, but the Shruti, that is to say, I mean, it almost declares that that person's words are at once perfect and axiomatic, infallible, absolute, and sacrosanct. Means it's as good as the Vedas. It's a very, very strong statement Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has made here. So it suggests how much faith he has in Narottam Das Thakur. And Chakravarti Pad's example likewise suggests how much faith we should place in Srila Prabhupada. That he is putting so much faith in his predecessor Acharya, we should also follow suit. There's no question of Srila Prabhupada's authority, given what he's done, as we said already. So these are a few things we can think about this. All right, so these are just some preliminary things I wanted to consider here. Actually, Narottam Das Thakur in his Prema Bhakti Chandrika, of which this song we just sang is the first entry. Before that, he gives a short Mangalacharana, 3 verses. So today we're going to look at those verses. We have some time. The first one is a verse that we all know, and we can all therefore, please repeat after me. Om Ajnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. It means, I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, who has opened my eyes that were blinded by the darkness of ignorance. And he's doing this with the torchlight of knowledge. So this is his first verse. And he gives his commentary also. His commentary itself, this is Narottam Das Thakur's first verse, I should say. But the Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary, he also gives his own Mangalacharana there. And there he glorifies Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What does he say? Advaita prakati krito narahari preshtha sarupa priyo nityananda sakha sanatana gati shri rupa hritketanaha Lakshmi Pranapatir Gadadhara Rasullasi Jagannatha Bhu Sangopanga Saparshadaha Sadayatam Devaha Shachi Nandanaha. Very beautiful verse. What does it mean? Lord Shachi Nandan's appearance was instigated by whom? Advaita Acharya. And he is most dear to Narahari and Sarup Damodar Prabhus. His dearmost friend is Nityananda Prabhu. And he is the goal, I don't know how to translate, Gati of Sanatana Goswami, Sanatana Gati. he resides within the heart of Srila Rupa Goswami. He is the Lord of Lakshmi Priya's life, Lakshmi Pranapatir. And he enjoys rasa with Gadadhara Pandit, Gadadhara Rasullasi. He cherishes his father, Jagannath Mishra. This is, I had some trouble translating this because the word actually used is Jagannatha Bhuhu. You can say in colloquial English, it means he means the world to his father, Jagannath Mishra. But it also suggests that his father is his world. You can take it either way, depending on your rasa, I suppose. But anyway, may that deity, Deva Shachi Nandanaha, the son of Mother Shachi, along with all his associates, servants, and inner circle, be merciful to us, or be merciful to you. He doesn't say. But he gives us a very beautiful picture of Lord Shachinandan, shining like molten gold, which is his sentiment. And with his ajanulambita bhujas, and he's decorated with sandal pulp, and his hair is tied with pearls, and he has radiant tilak made of Malayaja Chandana, beautiful Shachinandan. He has anklets on his lotus feet, and he has garlands of flowers around his neck and around his wrists, and he's dancing in the melodious kirtan of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So just to invoke auspiciousness, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur opens up his commentary with this meditation. Now he explains the verse, Om Jnana Timirantasya Ityadi. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Shri Gurum Pratinamostu. This means that let me offer repeated obeisances. Pratinamaha means again and again unto the spiritual master. Kim bhutayam yena guruna mama chakshuhu netram unmilitam. What kind of guru is this? He is the guru who has opened my eyes. Chakshur means netram unmilitam. Mama kim bhutasya ajnana timiranthasya ajnanameva timiram akshirogas tenanthasya drishti shakti rahatasya. Kim va ajnanam avidya tadeva timiram andhakaras tena andhasya. This means he's going to explain what kind of ajnana are we suffering from. The darkness of ignorance is an eye disease through which we've become blind. That is to say, bereft of vision. It's interesting here because he uses the word drishti shakti rahita, bereft of the power to see. Bereft of vision is one thing, but bereft of the power to have that vision, that's another thing altogether. We'll explain it in a moment. So, this is the darkness of ignorance. It's an eye disease. Or you can also say it's just simply darkness, lack of knowledge. There are two things going on. One thing is to be immature in Krishna consciousness. You have a lack of knowledge because of lack of experience. You haven't realized much yet. We're all in that stage, more or less. Another thing is to be lacking vision because you lack the power to gain that vision. This is a worse thing, because some people are like that also. He explains it in a moment, so maybe I should just continue. But the darkness of ignorance is an eye disease through which they become blind or bereft of vision, or it's simply darkness, a lack of knowledge of the bewildered person, antasya. Now, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he's continuing. I don't know if I didn't finish this actually, so let me go ahead and continue here. He says, Ajnana tamaso nama kaitavam yatha Sri Chaitanya Charitamrite Ajnana tamir nama kahiye kaitab dharma artha kama moksha vanchadishab taramodhe Moksha vancha kaitava pradhan, jaha hoite Krishna bhakti hoy antardhan. Krishna bhakti badhaka shata shubha shubha karnam, shai eka jiver ajnana tamodhanam. And then he goes on. He's switching back and forth. This is a Bengali quote. Now he goes back into Sanskrit. Kaya unmilitam jnananjana shalakaya Ishwaraha paramaha Krishnaha satchidananda vigraha anadiradir govindaha sarva karana karanam ityanena Krishnastu bhagavan swayam ityanena cha Krishna bhagavatto jnanam evajnananjana shalakataya Krishna bhagavat taijnana samvider sara iti Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Okay, so he's saying here in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is Adi Lila chapter 1, text 90 through 94 roughly. The name for the darkness of ignorance that we're speaking of here, Ajnanatama, is Kaitava. What does Kaitava mean? Selfish deceit. It's more than just ignorance, you see. To suffer from deception is worse than to suffer from ignorance. If somebody asks you how to get to Krishna Balaram temple, and you know the way, and you don't tell them deliberately, that's a different thing than if you just, oh, sorry, I don't know. You see? So this is what we're talking about. One of them is just ignorance, the other one is rascaldom. So, the darkness of ignorance is called Kaitava, the way of cheating. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita, which begins with religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. What do we know these as in Hindi or Bengali or Sanskrit? Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. It's a strong statement. You wouldn't think that dharma is the root of all cheating. But this is what he says. Ordinary dharma without God in the picture. Dharma for the purpose of my own elevation, that is cheating. Selfish. Selfish dharma. And people do this. Yes, they do. They're only, these people who are doing karma, mimamsa, and other things, they're just thinking about their own future. Kind of like when we're young and our parents push us to go to school, the parents are thinking about, your success. You have to have a successful life. You have to be well off enough that you're not suffering in any way. That requires an education. So, and similarly, those who are a little bit more enlightened, they understand that since I'm eternal, I don't know what I'm going to be in my next life. I better make sure it's something good. But they're not interested in getting out. They're only interested in elevating within this cesspool of material existence. Prabhupada used to say it like this. You can have a class A prison cell or you can have a class D prison cell. So, it's really not that advanced to try to get the first class prison cell instead of the fourth class prison cell. You're in prison, Baba. So this is the point. To come to the point of knowledge is very essential. All right, so he makes this very strong statement that cheating begins with this so-called religiosity, and attending on that are economic development, sense gratification. Of course, we don't want to leave that out, right? Sense gratification, hona parega, and liberation. Really, if you look at it, there's two things that we're doing here with regards to the Lord. One is that we're trying to exploit the Lord's energies. We are trying to exploit. We want to be the enjoyer. We push him out of the way. We want to take it instead. When that fails and you suffer as a result of your own foolishness, naturally, then what do? Then we try to escape from the reactions of what we ourselves have created. So it's called bhoga and tyaga. We try to exploit the Lord's energies, or we try to, while we're evading his authority, or we just try to escape from the reactions that we naturally create for ourselves. Either way, it's foolishness. Either way, it's ignorance. This is his point. Dharma is a very good thing. We're not discouraging that. But dharma without any concern for God, that is also ignorance. Because it's just temporary. For a few years or for a few lifetimes, you may be elevated in status. And relatively speaking, you have a better prison cell than other people. But how long can it last? Not going to last very long. So it's foolishness, it's ignorance. Then he goes on to say, this is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Remember, we're reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is being quoted by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary on this song, Sri Guru Charana Padma. Foremost process of cheating is the desire to achieve liberation by merging into the Supreme. For this causes the permanent disappearance of loving service to Krishna. So-called mukti, moksha, it's actually worse than hell. Because at least in hell you have some chance to worship Krishna and pray to get out and to pray to resume your eternal constitutional position of pure devotion to the Lord's lotus feet. But in this so-called impersonal liberation, there's no question of service because there's no question of anyone to serve. And there's no real distinction between you and that person also, if you ascribe to Mayavad philosophy especially. Mayavad philosophy says, Kevala Advaita. It's all only one. So that means that you're also God, I'm also God, service is also God, stool is also God, everything God. So, there's no question of devotional service. That is hell. All kinds of activities, both auspicious and inauspicious, that are detrimental to the discharge of transcendental loving service to Lord Sri Krishna are actions of the darkness of ignorance. So here he's giving the Vaishnava perspective on what is Shubha and Ashubha. Shubha means, is it related to Krishna? Is it giving pleasure to Krishna? Then it is Shubha. Otherwise, if it's got nothing to do with Krishna, or it's not pleasing Krishna, then it is Ashubha. What is the verse? We've heard so many verses like this. Narayana parasarve sarge. What is it? Nakutashtan bibyati svargapa varga narakeshwapi tulya darshanaha. A devotee sees, if I'm going to heaven, that's fine. If I'm going to hell, fine. Because for a devotee, it just doesn't matter. Anywhere a devotee goes, he's only got one concern anyway. And what is that? Love. Let me love Krishna, no matter where I am. You can render service to Krishna, even in hell. You can do it. In London, one devotee asked Srila Prabhupada a question. Does Krishna sometimes speak Bhagavad Gita on the hellish planets? And Prabhupada was so sharp, without missing a beat, he instantly replied, yes, this London is also a hellish planet, and we're speaking here. So devotee, it's like this Bengali proverb, Teki, that thing that if you take this thing back to Godhead, it's still going to do the same thing, even if it's in Vaikuntha. Or a typewriter, Prabhupada updated it. He said, we don't have typewriters anymore, but now you've got a tablet, right? You take your tablet to Vaikuntha, it's still going to do the same thing. Doesn't matter. So devotee is like this. His only concern is Krishna involved? Check. Then it's good. If Krishna is not involved, no. Then no good. All right, so this is the Vaishnava conception. And then he says, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, now he continues, what is that surgical instrument, shalaka it's called in Ayurvedic medicine, that applies the ointment of transcendental knowledge, jnana anjana, by which one's eyes are opened. What is that thing? And he says, it's in Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, text 1. Ishwaraha paramaha Krishna satchidananda vigraha anadiradir govindaha sarvakarana karanam. You may recall, if you are reading such things, that in his famous 1936 address to the Gaudiya Math in Mumbai, Srila Prabhupada quoted this verse in regards to his spiritual master. He said, had you not come, there's no way we would have ever come to this conclusion. That Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. This is Brahma Samhita. And here's another thing. This is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur continuing. Krishna, however, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What is that in Sanskrit? You should know this from 1st Canto, Chapter 3. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. He's a whole list of avatars he's given, different forms and incarnations of the Lord. And at the end he says, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. But of all of these, Swayam Bhagavan is Krishna only. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, this is knowledge of Krishna's Godhead. And this is because Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita has said in Adi Lila chapter 4, text 67, the essence of the samvit potency is knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Lord Krishna. So, that's an important thing also. Yeah. Did everybody get that? I'll say it again. He's quoting at the very end of this commentary on this particular verse, Chaitanya Charitamrita, which says, Adi Lila chapter 4, text 67, the essence of the samvit potency is knowledge that the Supreme Lord is Krishna. The Lord's internal potency has what aspects? There are 3 of them. What are they? Samdhini, Samvit, and Ahladani. The Samdhini potency is existence. Samvit potency is awareness. And Ahladani potency, that is bliss. So Sat, Chit, Ananda, all 3 of these things. These comprise the Lord's internal energy. And the Samvit potency is personified as Balaram. And the Hladani potency is personified as Srimati Radharani. Yes. Okay, so this is the knowledge that the spiritual master, bona fide spiritual master, gives us, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. And this is what opens our eyes. When our eyes are opened, we no longer see things in terms of our illusory false ego, and in which we bumble through material life trying to exploit or escape, and just basically end up suffering as a result. At the very best, at the very worst, we suffer the results of our own sinful reactions, because everybody commits sin, even if you don't want to. Arjuna has pointed out for us in Bhagavad Gita, it's almost as if you're forced to do stupid things for which you have to pay later. You have to suffer. So then, if not that, then we have to suffer further entanglement from our pious activities. Because even pious activities keep you in this material world, keep you reincarnating from one body to another. We talked about this already. That's why the karmis, real karmis, not vikarmis like mostly we have now, but karma mimamsakas, I should say, they're trying to make sure they get to Svarga. They're just trying to reserve a good spot for their next life. But they're not trying to get out. So it's just further entanglement. And any birth in this material world means you're going to undergo the threefold miseries of material existence. Miseries imposed upon you by fate, miseries imposed upon you by others, miseries that you've brought in your own body or mind. You have to suffer in all three ways. And even if you can tolerate those, and still you have to undergo birth, death, old age, disease. Nobody's free. So it's not a good idea to stick around in this material world either. Even if you try to make it really good, doesn't really work. And the very best that you can hope for is liberation. But that liberation is also not really happiness, because it's just abeyance of suffering. You're just postponing suffering for a while, or you're escaping suffering for some time. But it doesn't actually it doesn't satisfy the heart's deepest yearning, this impersonal liberation especially. So it's frustrating. Either you get the pain of bad karma, you get the further entanglement of good karma, or you get the frustration of gyan. That's the problem with non-devotional existence. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has stated that these things constitute the root of our cheating. Because there's a reason we have this ignorance. We said already, we can dilate on it perhaps in a moment. But knowledge means, the knowledge that really awakens us is knowledge of Krishna and his energies. You had a question, sir. Yes. Yes. Existence means, this is the subject of the Upanishads. The question is, we've been talking about the three aspects of the Lord's internal energy. One is existence, one is knowledge, one is ecstasy. Existence, what is that existence? That just means Brahman, Brahmabhuti. Awareness of one's identity as pure spirit, free from all material dross. But it's a tabula rasa, so there's not really much ecstasy happening there. Relief you can get by that knowledge. Impersonal gyan, we call it. But it's necessarily theoretical. The first problem is that it's not practical. You cannot apply it. As soon as you apply it, it's no longer gyan. It turns into karma. That's the problem. But it does relieve you. That as long as you can somehow or other hold on to that realization that, Chidanandoham, right? Shivoham, Shivoham, as they say. As long as you have that theoretical appreciation that I am spiritual. And if you understand the nature of spirit, which is that it doesn't have to undergo decay, birth, death, old age, disease, these things, then there's some relief there. But relief is different than positive happiness. This is the point. So existence just means the Lord's eternal spiritual substrate, as it were. Adhara, as we say. Krishna says this in Bhagavad Gita, Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya yasya. I am the basis of all this spiritual existence. So the Supreme Lord is understood in three ways, depending on one's approach. If you're mainly concerned with existence, then you will appreciate the Lord as impersonal, pantheistic spirit, something like that. Impersonal. If you're interested in if you're interested in knowledge of the categories, the Lord and his energies, then you can appreciate the Lord as Paramatma. But if you want to understand Krishna as a person and experience the ecstasy of loving him in exchange, reciprocal exchange, that is Ladini Shakti. That is devotional service. Hope that's okay. Yeah. Yes, it does. Exactly. Very good. Okay. All right. So this is the conclusion of his commentary on the first verse of Narottam Das Thakur, then he quotes himself, he quotes the second verse in his own Mangalacharana, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Another well-known verse you can all repeat after me. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Soyam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Now, we have what we call Padhantara here. We usually say Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam, but here he says So Ayam Rupa Kadamahyam. It comes out to meaning much the same. The translation is, when will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Okay, so here Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur now comments on this verse. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhur Manobhishtam Manobhilashatam Srimad Bhagavad Bhakti Rasa Shastram Bhutale Yena Rupena Sthapitam Nirupitam Sa Swayam Rupa Swapadantikam Nija Charana Nekatam Kada Bhagyavashena Mahyam Dadati Sri Rupasya Kripaya Nijanu Charatvena Tat Sevana Karnama Karavaniti Bhavaha. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire, that is to say what his mind cherished, Mano Abhilashitam, has been established or sthapitam or ascertained, nirupitam, on this earth by Srila Rupa Goswami in the form of scripture delineating devotional mellows, rasa. And you can only think of one book when you hear a sentence like this. What is it? I'll say it again. He has established on this earth the heart's desire of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the form of scripture delineating devotional mellows. Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. Prabhupada said, this devotional service is itself like an ocean. And it's an ocean not of water, especially not salt water. It's an ocean of the sweet nectar of devotional love, devotional reciprocation with the Supreme Lord in various different flavors. Not just static thing. It is ecstatic thing, dynamic thing. Everyone is involved. Everyone is accommodated. And all variety is fully manifest in the sweetest way possible. So Srila Rupa Goswami has given us these Bhakti Shastras, of which the foremost I would say is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the title of his book, which is what Prabhupada called it what did he call it? The science, complete science of Bhakti Yoga. He really does break everything down in great detail and very systematically. What does it mean to be a devotee? How to practice devotional service? So Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. It's like an ocean of nectar. And what is that nectar? That nectar is Bhakti Rasa. And there in the beginning, in his own summary study, Srila Prabhupada paraphrases Rupa Goswami in saying that anyone who participates in this science of devotional service is like an aquatic creature who dives into this ocean of Bhakti Rasa. So all the devotees are like different kinds of fish that are swimming in this ocean, but this ocean is not salty water. It is instead an ocean of the greatest, sweetest nectar. So some of them are experiencing the sweetness of Madhurya Rasa. Some of them are experiencing the exchanges of parental affection. Some of them are experiencing the bond of friendship with Krishna. Some of them are ecstatic servants of the Lord. Some are just passively appreciating also. Either way, everybody is accommodated in this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And Rupa Goswami has established that in this world. It's such a great gift. We cannot cannot even begin to calculate what a great gift he's given us in the form of this great science of bhakti yoga. Not that bhakti wasn't there before. It was. It's eternal. Just as the Vedas are eternal. We had bhakti, Narada Bhakti Sutras are there. Shandilya Sutras were also there early on. But among the Smriti literatures, Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is very, very important, because no one before him had ever stated in such a scientific and comprehensive manner the complete process of bhakti yoga, by which we can actually gauge our own process on this path of bhakti. We'll get to that in a moment, but so he's praying like this. When will he give me shelter at his lotus feet? When will that very Rupa Goswami, by my great fortune, give me shelter at his own lotus feet? That is to say, proximity to his lotus feet, Nija Charana Nekatam. The idea is that by Sri Rupa Goswami's mercy, may I thus be engaged also as his faithful servant. Okay. That is the end of his Mangalacharana, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Mangalacharana. We will begin to discuss the Bengali song of Narottam Das Thakur proper tomorrow. And for now, I'm just going to sum up that one of these phrases that I mentioned already, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur talks about drishti, what is it he said? Drishti Shakti Rahitya. This is our disease. We don't have the power to actually see anything. It's not a question of having to have glasses. If you have no eyes, you do not need glasses. We don't have the power. And this is very important to consider. There's a reason that we are blind. And that reason is Kaitava. This is what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's conclusion is, which we've been explaining. We have two kinds of darkness. One of them is innocent foolishness due to immaturity or whatever. The other one is actually this cheating propensity, which is so much worse. So the power to see is our inclination to submissively hear with rapt attention from a bona fide guru. Now, what is it that gives us that ability? Some people come and they can hear and they can understand, but they cannot accept because they're not submissive. Other people are very submissive. They come and they hear, but they can't understand. Also, both kinds we see. And some people don't even bother to come here. And some people coming and they're hearing and they're understanding, and they try to apply to some degree, but they're cheating all at the same time. These are the sahajyas. And all of us will fit in there somewhere. You have to, on your own time, in your own way, you have to judge where you stand. But everybody falls into one of these categories, unless you are actually already in a liberated state and really relishing the ecstasy of pure love of Godhead. There's a problem. And this is what's taking away our power to see, drishti shakti. So how do we get this power? Well, we know from the Upanishads, what is that? If you have pure foodstuffs, then your thoughts will be pure. If your thoughts are pure, then your activities will be pure. If your activities are pure, then you become a candidate for pure devotional service. This is something that Krishna tells us in Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, text 28. Anybody know that? I'll give you a hint. Yesham twanta gatam papam jananam punyakarnamanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bhajante mam drhavrataha. People, Krishna says, people who can really be fixed in pure devotional service, just like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was glorifying Narottam Das Thakur's fixity, his bhakti nishtha. People who have that qualification, they're pious. Impious people cannot have that qualification. They don't get it. So there is great value in dharma, even though we just said, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said, it's the root of all cheating. Very strong statement. But it does have value. If you approach Krishna, it has great value. It's exactly like this. Srila Prabhupada said, you may have a whole bag full of zeros, 100 zeros. Dump them out, line them up. How much is it when you add them all together? 0. Now, what happens if you put a 1 in front of all those zeros? Then you've got a lot of value. You see? That number 1 is bhakti. If you take all of these things, whether it's karma, or it's dharma, or it's artha, kama, moksha, whatever you have, if you employ that in devotional service, then it becomes very valuable. Very valuable. So nothing is rejected, actually, except non-devotion. That is rejected. So this is the point. So this inability to hear submissively from a pure devotee, or to understand what he says, or to apply what he says in our own life, this is coming from our own impiety. And to remedy that, at least, we have an obligation to follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions on this matter. He actually wanted us to become dharmic. In the last 3 years he was on this planet, Srila Prabhupada gave roughly 80% of his instructions on the topic of varnashram dharma. Because he saw his own disciples, they couldn't stay faithful in their marriages, they couldn't keep their initiation vows, they were not reading his books, they were fighting amongst one another. Do we see these problems now? Yes. And this is why they're there. It begins with hearing, but a person who's not pious cannot hear. This is the problem. There's one devotee I know, actually I hate to say even he's initiated, very smart person. He's a manager in a big corporation in South India. Very smart, very competent. Everything he touches, materially, it becomes successful. He's got many, many followers also, but he can't hear. He just can't hear. Even his own guru, he can't hear. He doesn't listen to anybody. His own father, he doesn't listen to. So, this is a problem. So, yesham tvantagatam papam jananam punya karmanam. If you're instead fixed in punya, then you are making life easy for yourself. You're making your devotional career very, very easy. Te dvanva moha nirmukta bhajanti mam dridhavrataha. These people worship Krishna with dridhavrata, fixed enthusiasm, bhakti nishta, as we heard. And dvanva moha nirmukta, they're liberated from all the misconceptions, all the illusions, all the false ego, all the bad habits, the doubts, everything that comes from your non-devotional career. This is called dvanva moha, the bewilderment of duality in this material world. So when we're finally free from that due to acting piously with determination, then we can actually hear something and it gets in. And it doesn't just go into the ears, it goes into the heart. Je Gauranga Madhur Lila, Jare Karne Probeshilo, Antar Hridoy Nirmal Bhelotar. Narottam Das Thakur put it so nicely. When you hear, it's not just supposed to go in your ears. When you take darshan, it's not just supposed to stay on your eyes. When you take prasadam, it's not just for your tongue, my friends. These things have to go deep, deep within. This is what it means to be what Prabhupada called a deep water fish in the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. Think about this. Anybody here grew up next to the ocean? I did, Los Angeles. So those who are near the ocean, they understand this analogy. Little fishies, they swim around in the ocean, and up towards the top of the water, that's where all the warm water is. Very, very very comfortable, very nice. And they may become curious, oh, what's out there? But the problem is that all these pelicans are circling overhead, and they have very keen eyesight, these birds. They can see who's down there, and they just dive bomb. And they just open their beak, and this little guy never saw what hit him, and he's already down, swallowed, finished in a split second. This is how Maya works. If we're just too casual about devotional service, and we're not going deep into the ocean of bhakti rasa, then this is what happens to us. Maya will send in Urvashi our way, or Maya will tempt us with how many crores of rupees. Oh my God, what am I? We all get so, we start to salivate, just like dogs. So this is the problem. We have to be deep, and that requires piety. So Bhagavad Gita suggests that. Now, there's a certain kind of, we see, practically speaking, I sometimes share this, that I was initiated some 50 years ago, and there were 5 people only, 5 brahmacharis from Radha Damodar party, who were initiated in the same yajna that I was initiated within. I'm the only one left. And I think the statistics are pretty much applicable across the board through the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We know there's like a revolving quorum of people who are always in the society at any given time, but very often they come, they stay, they become advanced, they get puffed up, they offend, and then they leave. Unfortunately, what happens? So, we have to maintain that pious mindset and pious activities also. And then we can persevere in devotional service. Now, sometimes people reject their bona fide spiritual master. I was talking about this person in the south. He also, he decided after initiation, he made the big blunder of deciding that he didn't like his guru so much anymore. That's not so bright. It happened even in Prabhupada's time, and Prabhupada mentions this in his commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 14, text number 30. I'm going to skip the Sanskrit, which is prose anyway. But there the verse says, pseudo-swamis, yogis, and incarnations who do not believe in the Supreme Personality of Godhead are known as pakhandis. They themselves are fallen and cheated because they do not know the real path of spiritual advancement, and whoever goes to them is certainly cheated in turn. When one is thus cheated, he sometimes takes shelter of the real followers of Vedic principles, Brahmanas, or those in Krishna consciousness, who teach everyone how to worship the Supreme Lord, according to Vedic authority. However, being unable to stick to these principles, these rascals again fall down and take shelter among Shudras who are very expert in making arrangements for sex indulgence. Sex is very prominent among the animals like the monkeys, and such people who are enlivened by sex may be called descendants of monkeys. This is not my words. It's also not Prabhupada's words. Yatha vanara jatehe. These are Shukdev Goswami's words. Actually, Prabhupada said on another occasion, people who cannot follow the 4 principles, no illicit sex, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling. People who cannot follow this, they're no better than animals. And here in his purport, he's very strong. Prabhupada actually said these people are living proof that man actually evolved from monkeys. Living proof of Darwin's theory. Prabhupada is, of course, being facetious, but very strong words. Let's hear what else he says, and then we're going to have to close up pretty soon. Those who come to the human form through the quality of sattva guna were considered to be who have been cows in their last life. Those who are coming into as human beings and they're very passionate, what were they in their last life? Lions. And those who are very tamasic in this life, what were they in their last pre-human form? Monkeys. And Prabhupada goes on to continue. In this age, those who come through the monkey species are also considered by modern anthropologists like Darwin to be descendants of monkeys. We receive information herein that those who are simply interested in sex are actually no better than monkeys. Monkeys are very expert. Have you seen them? Yes, of course you have. They're very expert in sexual indulgence. And sometimes sex glands are taken from monkeys and placed in the humans, so that a human being can enjoy sex in old age. In this way, modern civilization has advanced. Many monkeys in India were caught and sent to Europe so that their sex glands could serve as replacements for those of old people. I don't know who would agree with this, but first of all, the conditioned soul is cheated by so-called swamis, yogis, and incarnations when he approaches them to be relieved of his material miseries. When the conditioned soul is not satisfied with them, then he comes to devotees and pure brahmanas who try to elevate him for final liberation from material bondage. However, the unscrupulous conditioned soul cannot rigidly follow the principles prohibiting illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating. Thus, he falls down and takes shelter of people who are like monkeys. In the Krishna consciousness movement, these monkey disciples, being unable to follow the strict regulative principles, sometimes fall down and try to form societies of their own, we've seen, based on sex. This is proof that such people are descendants of monkeys as confirmed by Darwin. From this verse, therefore, it is clearly stated, yatha vanara jate he. All right. I'm not going to dilate on that too much. That's just one extreme example of what a sinful mentality can do to you if you don't do something to rectify it. Now, in the 7th canto, chapter 15, text 12 through 14, we have some more modes of cheating. Since Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said cheating begins with dharma, there are 5 kinds of pseudo-dharmas Shukdev Goswami mentions. Actually, I think it's Narad speaking there. Vidharma, that means irreligion. Vidharma ka matlab hai, vikarma hai, bas. Or it means something that is against dharma, but it's presented as if it is dharma. Like, I won't mention any names. There was one of them in Pune, maybe 30, 40 years ago. He's just openly advocating free sex and whatever you want and all these things. This is called vidharma. Paradharma. Have we heard paradharma in Bhagavad Gita? Twice we've heard it in Bhagavad Gita because Krishna says the same thing twice. Paradharma ka matlab kya hai? To do somebody else's duty. I'm a housewife, but instead I want to become a sannyasi. It doesn't work. It's somebody else's duty. You can't do that. That's irreligion. Upadharma. This is something that it's a semblance of dharma. It looks dharmic, but it's actually non-Vedic. And non-Vedic means atheistic. So, pretentious dharma also displayed by unauthorized people. It's kind of like they're pretending to be dharmic, but they actually believe it. That's called upadharma. Upama. Upama means a comparison. So upadharma is conjuncted here. Then we get out and out chala dharma. That's just pure cheating. These are people who are not even yogis. They're absolutely just cheating people just to make money and exploit them and whatnot. There's enough of those. Word jugglery, deception, hypocrisy, that's chala. And finally, dharmabhasa. It's a kind of dharma, but it's concocted worship. Arjuna asks about this in Bhagavad Gita also. People who are, as we already described in the beginning, Shruti, Smriti, Puranadi, Pancharati Vidhim Vina, that kind of so-called bhakti, that's called abhasa dharma. Looks like dharma, but it's not. So these things we have to be very careful to avoid because they're very pervasive. Vidharma paradharmascha abhasa upama chalaha adharma shakhaha panchema dharma gnyo adharmavat tyajet. This is the Srimad Bhagavatam text. 7, 15, 12. I'm not going to really explain that so much in any more detail because we're running low on time. But there is one more thing that I think may be worthwhile to mention about this, since we're on the topic of the vast ignorance that we all suffer from and what causes it. Dharma projita kaitavatra paramo nirmat saranam satam vedyam vastam avatra vastu shivadam tapatrayon mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Va Parayarishwaraha Sadyo Hridyavaruddhyate Kritabhihi Shushrushabhistat Kshanatha. Famous verse from Bhagavatam. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, that's Kaitava, this Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. That means Dvandva Moha Nirmukta. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge of the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. So this is actually the same passage that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is quoting in his commentary is including this verse. Also quotes this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. We don't really have time to explain it too much, but I think the meaning is fairly clear. Somehow or other, if we nonetheless just continue to hear Srimad Bhagavatam again and again and again and again, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, then hote sab kuch theek ho jayega. Our hearts will also become Shuddha, Bilkul Shuddha. So, this is the great mercy of the pure devotee. But the best thing is if we can do our own work to purify ourselves, as Prabhupada asked, then we hear what he says. We don't twist and twangle it and make it mean something other than what he intended, just because we'd like to hear that. This is the problem. To hear from a pure devotee is the beginning of bhakti and the most essential thing, but it's not so easy thing. I mean, it's a simple thing, but simple doesn't always mean easy. We're very much opposed to actually embracing the principles of pure devotional service because we're sinful. All right. Now, I just wanted to also comment that in his second Mangalacharana verse, shloka, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is praying to Rupa Goswami. Why Rupa Goswami? Why does he do that? First he says, he praises Lord Chaitanya, and then he's also, well, actually this is Narottam Das Thakur, if I'm not mistaken. He quotes Rupa Goswami, or he appeals to Rupa Goswami. Why is he doing that? Because he understood Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire. And Prabhupada mentions this in his introduction to Nectar of Instruction, Updeshamrita, quote, "The Krishna consciousness movement is conducted under the supervision of Srila Rupa Goswami. Gaudiya Vaishnavas are mostly followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of whom the 6 Goswamis are the direct disciples. Therefore, Narottam Das Thakur has sung, Rupa Raghunatha Pade Hoi Beakuti Kabe Ham Bujhavo She Jugala Piriti. When I'm eager to understand the literature given by the Goswamis, then I shall be able to understand the transcendental loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. Therefore, to understand the mission of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and follow in his footsteps, one must very seriously follow in the footsteps of the 6 Goswamis, Sri Rup Sanatan, Bhatta Raghunath, Sri Jiva, Gopal Bhatta, and Dasa Raghunath. Prabhupada also gives us a very positive, clear, and simple alternative to our ignorance in the second half of his purport to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 10. Anybody know that verse? I'll give you a hint. Vita Raga Jorse. Yeah, very, very profound verse. And Srila Prabhupada's purport to that verse is also brilliant, inimitably brilliant. Because he's talking about the things that ensnare us in this day and age, almost as if that verse was custom tailored for Srila Prabhupada to comment on. Prabhupada does not follow any of his predecessors in his comments on that verse also. Because the Prabhupada's purport could only have been written for us, and it could only have been written by him. But after illustrating some of the many ways in which we are drowning in attachment, fear, and anger, Srila Prabhupada gives us a very shining and positive alternative in the form of the process of devotional service. And the process of devotional service enunciated by none other than Srila Rupa Goswami. That's why this verse is here as the second Mangalacharan verse of Prema Bhakti Chandrika. I'm just going to quote from his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is also in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 24, text 14 and 15. You all know these verses, I think. Adav shraddha tata sadhu sangotha bhajana kriyaha tato narthana vritti syat tato nishtharuchistataha atha saktis tato bhavas tata prema bhyatanchati sadhakanamayam premnaha pradurbhave bhavet kramaha. That means, in the beginning, there's like 8 stages. You can mark them. In the beginning, there must be faith. Then one becomes interested in associating with pure devotees. Thereafter, one is initiated by the spiritual master and executes the regulative principles under his orders. Thus, one is freed from all unwanted habits and becomes firmly fixed in devotional service. We talked about that, or rather, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur talked about that in regard to Narottam Das Thakur, Nishtha Bhakti. Fixed and in devotional service, thereafter one develops taste and attachment. This is the way of sadhana bhakti, the execution of devotional service, according to the regulative principles. That's 7 stages so far. Gradually, emotions intensify, and finally there is an awakening of love. So this is the gradual development of love of Godhead for the devotees interested in Krishna consciousness. The beginning is faith in good association. And when one takes up the instructions of the sadhus to perform bhajana kriya, one has to accept a bona fide spiritual master, take initiation, and be trained by him in bhakti. This is something Rupa Goswami also talks about in the beginning of his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, naturally, because it's a complete science of bhakti yoga. Tatra guru padashrayo yathaikadashe, and then he quotes the famous verse, Tasmat gurum prapadyeta nishnatam brahmani upashamashrayam. Famous verses. One has to take shelter of a spiritual master. This is confirmed in the 11th canto. Any person who really desires happiness must do this. And that guru has to be conversant with the scriptures, accomplished in hearing and chanting, and fully tranquil. Shabde parech nishnatam brahmani upashamashriyam. And then he goes on to say, Krishna, Sri Krishna Dikshadi Shikshana Yatha Tatreva. And it is quoting from another verse. He says, 11th canto, acquiring knowledge after taking initiation, accepting the spiritual master as one's life and soul and worshipable deity, the disciple should learn from him the process of pure bhakti by sincere service. By that pure bhakti, the Lord, the Supreme Soul, will be satisfied and will give himself to the devotee. There's much more we can say here, but I'm just whizzing through this because it's time to wrap up now. Then he talks about Vishrambhena Guroho Seva, very intimate service to the spiritual master. He quotes from 11th canto, Acharyam mam vijaniyan navamanyeta karhichit, or Sarvadeva mayo guruhu. This is how one has to see the Guru. Why am I saying this? Why am I quoting these verses? Because these are all verses that we're going to have to keep in mind in order to understand this song. We haven't even begun yet. Today's only the introduction. We have 2 days of analysis of Narottam Das Thakur's song. But we'll see how these verses are important because we'll return to these themes. What does it mean? In the, again, 11th canto, he says, with regard to serving the spiritual master with reverence, one should know the Acharya as myself, Krishna says, and never disrespect him in any way. One should not envy him, thinking him an ordinary man, for he is the representative of all the demigods. Bhagavatam's own language is much stronger than that. Sarva Deva Mayo Guruhu. He's made out of all the demigods. Anyway, we may have time to discuss that a little bit later. But this is the idea. And this mode of approaching a spiritual master and learning from him, worshiping him, this is the example that we have received from our predecessors. And that's the next thing Rupa Goswami says. Sadhu vartmanu vartanam yatha skande, Skanda Purana. One should follow the scriptural rules which give the highest benefit and are devoid of hardship, by which the previous devotees easily progressed. Jiva Goswami comments, Sadhu Vartma, or the proper path, means the path comprised of rules from the Shruti and other scriptures as they were practiced and understood by the predecessor acharyas. Okay, I'm going to stop here now, but if anybody has any questions or any comments, we have a few minutes left. And again, tomorrow we're going to begin with Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma. It's going to get really good, so you don't want to miss that. But does anybody have any questions or any comments also on anything that we've said today? Lots of commentary. And yes. Yes. I mean, the lack of piety is, you can say it's due to ignorance, but ignorance is also a byproduct of our impiety. They which is first, nature or nurture? They go together. Go ahead. Oh, you may be surprised. I live here. Oh, definitely. Yeah, the Bhagavatam is definitely encouraging us at every step, whenever you can, and however many ways you can, you must cultivate sattva guna. That is a priority. So, is your question satisfied? Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's always a mix. Each of us has some piety to be really positive and encouraging. We could focus on that. I'm trying to follow the commentary, and what he emphasizes in his commentary, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, is, well, in order to appreciate what the spiritual master has done for us, we have to appreciate what his function is, and in order to appreciate that we have been granted something very valuable, we have to understand what was our unfortunate condition before we were blessed with this knowledge, and what is the likelihood that anyone can gain this knowledge without a bona fide spiritual master. Gratitude is a very, very key thing. Any disciples of Radhanath Swami should know this, because he's constantly talking about the importance of gratitude. We really have to appreciate what we've been given. And of course it's mixed. All of us has many positive things. All of us have some challenges also. But every one of us has to really appreciate what Prabhupada has done for us. Every one of us has to appreciate the transparency of our own bona fide spiritual master, what he can do for us, what we have to do for him. These things are all very important. That's why we're having this seminar. Okay, you had a question?
Actually, this normally we say that we have to serve Krishna, we have to love Krishna. I mean, this is a very common thing or common goal in our ISKCON teachings. Actually, loving, how can we love Krishna when we have not seen him? We can love a person whom we have seen, but how we can serve or love? Okay, we can wipe the floor, we can cook, we can do these service which are materially, but how by doing this, say by distributing books, by cleaning the floor, we are serving Krishna?
We can do this by hearing. Chandrakanti did this. That example is given in the Nectar of Devotion. Just by hearing, she became attracted. Rukmini also, just by hearing about Krishna, she became attracted to Krishna. That attraction, at least, is the beginning of love. And then when there's actually some service, that love will develop. One of my tabla guru, he's an American, actually, believe it or not, and he wrote an essay on arranged marriage. His thesis in his essay was that arranged marriages, he had an arranged marriage, by the way. He said arranged marriages are better because arranged marriages are predicated on the postulation that pure love has no expectations, which sounds to me a lot like what Bhagavatam presents as pure love. Ahaituki, apratihata. These are two characteristics of love without expectations. One, there's no hetu, no motive, no agenda. And two, there's no interruption for that reason. So he put it very bluntly, and he's a smart guy, very smart. He said, if you make a list of all the reasons that you love your spouse, that is your list of all the reasons that you will eventually not love your spouse. Because they're all temporary things. You can't deny it. If you tell your spouse, I love you for absolutely no reason whatsoever except that you're my spouse, that is real love. Wrap your head around that. But the fact of the matter is that if you're ready to do that, if you're prepared to place your faith in that principle and act on it, the love will develop. Zarur. Otherwise, how is this system going on for thousands and thousands of years? Only now we have this love marriage, and therefore we have 50% divorce also. But otherwise, the Shishta-Shara, the Paramparagata Bharatiya Sanskriti was always this thing only. The postulation is that love is without any expectations, without any interruptions, without any motivations. That's very necessary. And that can be gained just by hearing. We hear that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Not everyone is a gopi that they don't care if Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Most of us are not so advanced. But just by hearing about Krishna and his glories, and just by hearing of this process and being convinced of its efficacy, and by taking up this practice of bhakti, hote, we can also develop love for Krishna, even though we don't see him yet. But even there, you actually have seen him. If you really have faith, and you go at 7:15 a.m. in front of Krishna and Balaram, and you see the Lord, and you pray to him with full faith, you have seen him. Is it okay? Krishna reveals himself in his Swayam Bhagavan form very gradually, and in commensurate to the level of surrender that we have offered to him. That's his right. But you cannot say that it's impossible to love Krishna just because you haven't seen him. There are many people who have seen Krishna and still cannot love him. Duryodhana was one of them. And there are many people who have not seen Krishna and still love him. I gave some examples already. You can be another one. Why not? Just follow the process with faith. You will have the result. Is that okay? Faith. Adav Shraddha. This is the preliminary thing. How about over here? No other questions? Okay, then we will stop here. Thank you all very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Hare Krishna.